Well, we've been in a 10-week series, and this is the 10th week. Here you go, Ron. So we're going to go over them all together, right? So, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make idols. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And that's where we were just around pre-Christmas Sunday. And so we're going to touch a little bit more by way of review. We talked about how bearing false witness is sort of the intrigue that we sometimes have about scandalous things. And I should have brought it this morning. We were at Nathan's and we're doing some renovations at his house, and under the stairwell there's this little cubby hole, and we found a box of old magazines, and it's always a bit risky. And so a couple of them were like from the 1950s, right, Gail? Yeah. So Mary brought one of them home, and can you remember the title?
My Secrets or Secret?
My Secrets or something like that. Can some of you remember those old magazines? It's like True Confession and My Secrets. And so it's like, ooh, because guys aren't supposed to read those. It's like this very weird stuff. But it's all sort of this scandalous kinds of things. And we seem to have a draw towards those kinds of things, which is quite problematic because it leads us into this world of gossip. And you shall not bear false witness or tell a lie, which is how some of the other translations have that passage for us. So all kinds of rumors and gossip, communication, talking, lies, false propaganda, like to live in a generation where somebody would introduce the phrase fake news or false news or something, right? It's like, okay, it gets really hard to understand. Alternative facts. I'm going like, I don't understand what all that means. But then we spent some time particularly on this issue of cyberbullying and the issue that the youth of today are being pressured with far beyond anything that our old playground chorus of sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Well, now in the cyber world, names are driving young teens to suicide in desperation because of the terrible things that are being falsely said about them and the rumors that get spread and as they propagate. And so we gave a bit of advice to stop breaking the 9th commandment on Facebook. And just sort of, I have to be becoming more critical as well in terms of ensuring that what I post is actually facts. And so there's a whole program called Snoops that you can go in to check the facts. And even then, the guy that founded Snoops turned out to be snooping around and taking stuff and going, he just killed the credibility of his whole agency. It was pretty strange. So Paul's advice, in contrast to this lying tendency and this gossip tendency, was to let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from along with all malice. Because that tendency to bear false witness, that tendency to lie, grows out of bitterness and anger and slander, malice. It's just woven into that. And so he also includes it in Colossians. But now you also, remember he's speaking to the church. He's speaking to believers who are now believers but weren't. And so he has this, but now you also put them all aside, anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive speech from your mouth. I really believe that this is the huge challenge in our day because we're tended to be drawn into that kind of conversation. Remind people to be subject to rulers. This was Paul's advice to Titus. And authorities to be obedient, to be ready to do whatever is good, to slander no one, to be peaceable and considerate, and always to be gentle toward everyone. And like the Christian life is not an easy life. The challenges that we're given about being gentle toward a few people? No, being gentle towards everyone. The Christian life is difficult because we grew out of a world where we weren't followers of Jesus and now we're trying to be. And so gossip, if you're not part of the problem or the solution, then it's none of your business. And sort of make that decision that, okay, I'm not going to be drawn into that. And we talked about James. How do you tame the tongue in this difficulty. And we talked about how Jesus was the way, the truth, and the life, and that's the focus. I'm wanting to be able to give people direction. I want to be able to communicate the truth and to offer them life in Jesus' name. And that's why in Ephesians he tells us, Paul does, therefore, putting away lying, let each one of you speak truth with his neighbor, for we are all members of one another. And we explain Pinocchio and why the long noses. The ninth commandment is all about truth as a way of life, and the challenge that we have to live that out. And at the end of the last time we were together, we sort of summarized the 10 commandments, or at least the first 9. No gods before me, honor God's position of authority. No idols, honor God's nature. Honor his name, remember the Sabbath, honor his priorities, which were all the spiritual principles under which the others are built. So parents, honor your family. People, honor another's life. Marriage, honor your commitments. Community, honor another's property. Don't steal. Conversations, don't lie. Honor your word. So now we're coming into 2022. I keep saying that, so the next time I might write a check, because I don't even know if I have checks anymore in my drawer. Anybody still using checks? Yeah, there's a number of you, so that's good. How many don't know what a check looks like? Right? So if we had more young people, they'd be going, I have no idea what a check is. I know what a debit card is, and I know what a credit card is. So 2022, keep using that in case we have to keep using those numbers on things. A new year is like a blank book. The pen is in your hands. It is your chance to write a beautiful story for yourself. So, a couple of things. This is a picture of my uncle's and aunt's home in California, one of their Christmases. And so when their family gets together, like everybody brings all their stuff. So they got a bunch of them. But that's Christmas morning prior to the indulgence, as in getting into the gifts. And so it's just stacked. Like the tree just gets obliterated behind the stack of presents. And so oftentimes, like, what did you get for Christmas? So Mary and I weren't giving gifts, but I got gifts. It was kind of a weird thing, right? Because when you tell a man we're not giving gifts, what does he do? He doesn't buy gifts, right? And so if you tell your wife, yeah, we're not buying gifts, she goes, yeah, we're not buying gifts. What does she do? Buys gifts. That's why it's confusing. I keep trying to explain this to people about why we think differently. But the other question is, so what did you get for Christmas? Which is a pretty common question, especially when the family gets together. We don't usually ask that of each other. Like, I didn't ask you what you got for Christmas, right? Because it's like, that would be a weird question, right? Dave, did you get anything for Christmas?
Not that lots of sweet stuff.
So the answer would be yes.
Yes.
Right, sweet stuff. I saw a little hesitation there because I'm not sure you were pumped about that idea. Right? So, we got lots of sweets in our house as well. What did you get for Christmas? Comment. I think this is the more profound question. What did you give for Christmas? Because when I got thinking about the 10th commandment coming for us right after Christmas, this is great. You shall not covet. It's like Christmas is such in North America and in Europe and lots of places around the world, it's a gluttonous feed fest on stuff, right? And so I was going to try and find a picture of a Cabbage Patch doll. Anybody remember the Cabbage Patch doll? Did any of you buy a Cabbage Patch doll for a child? Okay, you're the perfect grandparents, or parents at that time, because it probably created harmony in the house. By not having a Cabbage Patch doll there that Christmas, in some families, was the ultimate disappointment. Because you couldn't go online to buy them. There was no such thing as online. And all the lineups to buy one in the stores were pretty much done. But there was something about, even with kids, I need to have that. I want that. Susie's got one, or Barbara's got one. And so we don't call it coveting, but it's what it is. So, word of the day, covet. Meaning, yearn to possess. Something, especially something belonging to another. Example, I covet one of their smart bags. I don't even know what a smart bag is. I was thinking a smartphone or a smart TV, but a smart bag, I don't know. But I included this one because it's from Spell Bee International. You can go on their website, Spell Bee International, because they're trying to teach you words of the day, but there's a misspelling edit thing on there. The word example is missing an E. It was just my weird sense of humor that the spelling people would misspell a word. But what's that?
It's missing an A as well.
Oh, which where? It's missing an A?
Example.
Oh, the A is also missing. Thank you very much, man. You've got better eyes than I do. So terrible. So, but the definition around coveting: to wish for with eagerness, to desire possession of, notably enviously, but also in a good sense. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. To long for inordinately or unlawfully, like this is this all-consuming tendency to hanker after. I'm going, who uses hanker anymore? Right? But it was part of the definition: to yearn, have, or indulge in inordinate desire, notably for another's possessions. So this is the neighbor's stuff, right? So it's sort of like this. I keep trying to figure out how to illustrate this. So, it's just this contrast glance. It's profoundly, sometimes we need to stop glancing. We should glance back and gaze forward. Webster's: to desire or wish for with eagerness, to desire earnestly to obtain or possess in a good sense. And 1 Corinthians 12 is listed there because Paul is encouraging the church to desire, to long for, and some of the translations will use the term covet, the gift of prophecy. And so he uses that phrase in the sense that there are some good things to really long after. Our problem is coveting is usually around something that's desiring inordinately or wrongly, to desire that which is unlawful to obtain or possess. In a bad sense, like in Exodus 20, where we have our commandment. So this would be another sort of looking way at how do we covet something. Poor Ron, where did Ron go? Ron slipped out. Ron's car broke down. I said, what year is it? It's a 2002. I'm going, of course it would break down. How old is that thing? But he wants it fixed because that car is important to him. And so we've got this sense that we don't always have to have the fastest and the biggest and the most. To covet, to desire to be consumed with desire for, crave, or jealous of. So let's get specific. In the listing in Exodus and in Deuteronomy, we have this sort of elaboration as Moses gives them the Ten Commandments. You shall not steal, you shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery. And up earlier, there's the honor your father and your mother, that it may go well with you. It's the first commandment with a promise. When he gets down to coveting at the last, he has an elaboration for us. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall not covet his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And so as I was going through sort of redoing it this morning, I went, whoa, well, who's my neighbor? Right? Is that the guy living next door? Because my car is almost as nice as his car. And my house is almost as nice as his house. And no. Remember when Jesus was confronted about the greatest commandments and love your neighbor as yourself? And the question that he got was, who's your neighbor? So your neighbor could be anybody whose possessions or position are in it, like just longed for or coveted after in your life. Mark 7 tells us that covetousness proceeds out of the heart of man. It's an ingrained trait in the fallen man. Romans 1:29 puts covetousness in the traits of mankind who have rejected the revelation of God. In 2 Timothy, it describes covetousness as a sign of the last days. Like there are all kinds of people that will go, oh yeah, wars, rumors of wars, bad storms, and all that kind of thing for the end times. But nobody pulls up this one. People will be lovers of self, lovers of money, covetous. And that's a true sign of the end. Romans 7 declares Paul's perspective on coveting. He's talking about how the things I want to do, I don't do, and the things that I don't want to do are the things that I very do. And he talks about how certain sins from the law he learned, and then when he learned about them, then he wanted to do those things. And he uses, by way of illustration, coveting. Of all the things that he could have used, he uses coveting to go, this is what was hard for me. And when I learned what it was and what I shouldn't do, it's what I really wanted to do. I started to covet other things and covet positions. But I did mention again that 1 Corinthians 12 tells us to long for or to desire the best gifts and to even prophecy. So then coveting is merely an intense, passionate desire for something. Sometimes it becomes an all-consuming desire. Evil coveting is an intense, passionate desire for things you've been denied the opportunity to have, that you are forbidden to have, or by circumstance you can never have. But you still want them. You still hunger after them. The perfect plan of God, many things we do not need, or that will be very bad for us. As for the two verses, they show us that there's good things that God has in store for us. So this one's a little bit hard to read, so I'm going to touch on it between envy and coveting. Envy is a feeling of discontent and resentment based on someone else's possessions, abilities, or status. Covet is the wishing and the longing or the craving for something that belongs to someone else. Envy is sort of like a feeling of discontent. But coveting is like this obsessive passion to have what they have. Envy can be felt about someone's possessions, abilities, status, and fortune. But coveting, it's usually associated with material possessions. It can be cancerous or it can be non-cancerous. It can be malignant or benign. But coveting is usually malicious. There's a malicious intent behind it. It's built around destroying someone else. Envy is considered one of the deadly sins, and coveting is included in one of the 10 Commandments. Let's go back to the beginning. In Genesis chapter 3, we've got the ideal living conditions for mankind. Everything is perfect, like everything. Everything man wanted or needed was all there. But then this old wicked guy shows up. And he says, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food, pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. We don't often think about Eve being covetous, but in fact, that's what she was. She demonstrates what that's like for us. It's something she's told she can't have. It's something that looks good. It's going to taste good, and it's going to give her a position she's not entitled to. So she doesn't think that through, but that's what's going on. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. So here's how the Apostle John takes that passage and gives it to today's context in 1 John 2:16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And so those things that we're drawn into, those things that might be the allure that has a draw on us, really are not from our Heavenly Father. There's this great graphic that I found, the 3 coordinates of Satan's triangle. The lust of the eyes, which is the desire to have all the world offers. The lust of the flesh is the desire to do what the world does. And the pride of life is the desire for the world's approval rather than the approval of God. And so this is what that looked like. The tree was good for food, the lust of the flesh. The tree was a delight to the eyes, the lust of the eyes. The tree was desirable to make one wise, the boastful pride of life. John gives us this at the end, but God illustrated to us in the book of Genesis. And so one of the challenges that we have are trying to figure out, how do I live in contrast to all the things that seem to be inherently woven into my life? This struggle for the things of the flesh and the things of my eyes and the things of life. Here's another way to look at this from the New Testament. 1 John 2:16, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. Can you remember when Jesus was tempted? Come back to how he was tempted like as we are. So make these stones into bread. Lust of the flesh. He was taken up onto the pinnacle of the temple and showed all the kingdoms of the earth. Showed them to him. The evil one's up there going at it. Same old tricks. The pride of life. If you are the Son of God, the angels will take care of you. Even Jesus had to deal with this temptation of covetousness, which is why it's in the Big Ten. And when the devil had ended all the temptation, he departed from him for a season. So here's this little sidebar. You might have success on a couple or three of those, and then you're going to go, man, it's all good. But let me let you know, the devil will be back. Those temptations are going to surface. So then let's make this practical. New Year's resolutions. I'm not going to ask if you've made any. I'm not going to tell you that you should. But there are going to be all kinds of people signing up for gym memberships tomorrow. Right? So the New Year's resolutions, more time with family, help others, exercise, eat healthy, less stress, learn new skills, sleep enough, go on vacation. Those would be great things to sort of build into your sort of bucket list for 2022. But here's the thing about them. This is the great one again. Lose weight. And like I say, all kinds of people are going to be jumping on that one. Because they didn't get a t-shirt, they got candy. They didn't get socks or underwear, they got candy. It's like, come on. The hard part isn't getting your body in shape. The hard part is getting your mind in shape. The issue about coveting and fighting these desires that the world pushes on us is really a head game. Proverbs 23:7, for as someone thinks in his heart, so is he. It's a heart issue. The whole 10 Commandments, they're heart issues. They're pushing us to think about who will we worship and what priorities will we have and how will we honor people. I had to put something sportish in. What you are thinking, what shape your mind is in, is what makes the biggest difference of all. Remember when I started, right at the start? How do we look at the hardships and the experiences that we have? And can we see the good in those things? It's shaping up our thinking. And I think that's what that God was trying to do for the nation of Israel, because they had come out of the land of bounty, of which none of it was theirs. And they're about to go into the land of super bounty, and it will all be theirs. And it is tragic how they become so covetous and self-centered because they had bad thinking. I found this one. Don't make resolutions, create habits. Even just pick one for this coming year. One that you'll change and one that will be new. And so just decide to have some small successes. Maybe do something about, since we're on coveting, do something about your stuff. Do something about all the things that you give and you keep and you're not sure what to do with. And our house is full of those things. So maybe do some decisions around that. A positive mind isn't an accident. It's the product of positive mental focus. A persistent positive focus creates a consistently positive mind. Your thoughts shape your reality. Your thinking forms your world. What you focus on expands. And what you dwell on determines your destiny. Watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. And watch your character, it becomes your destiny. I think too much about stuff that I shouldn't be thinking about. It keeps me up at night. You know, and we've got all kinds of stuff. I can remember reading on some financial stuff. When people start investing in the stock market, sort of all of that, it can become a consuming obsession because it's their stuff and it's out of their hands and into somebody else's. And so there's lots of stress that comes into those things. And here's where all of this comes from. Romans 12, Paul is trying to give the church at Rome a new way to think about things. And so he says, do not conform to the pattern of this world. Remember from 1 John, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, and the boastful pride of life. Don't be conformed to that pattern, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. It's a mind issue. It's a mind game. What you are thinking, what shape your mind is in, is what makes the biggest difference of all. And I'd like to suggest coming into this new year, it's your mind and what you're going to do in there and how open you will be to hearing God speak into your life. There's an interesting passage that Paul has about coveting. He doesn't use the phrase there, but there's some context that I think is really important. Paul writes, I know what it is to be in need. And that would be when he was shipwrecked, when he was in the sea a night and a day, when he couldn't find any food, when he was imprisoned, when he was beaten. And I know what it is to have plenty. Prior to him becoming a follower of Jesus, he was a Pharisee of the Pharisees. He was a somebody. He had servants, he had high education, he had it all in his world that he could have wanted. He was a Roman citizen. He could go anywhere he wanted. He had all of that. And sometimes we forget that. But then he goes, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. So let's take a look at Canada. Of those two statements, I would say that we are in the well-fed category. Haven't been hungry for a long, long time. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever really been that hungry. But I know people who have, and I know people who are struggling and maybe starving because they're hungry. And so how can they be content? So in Canada, are we living in plenty? Yeah, I think we're living in plenty. We got plenty enough. So I really don't know what it's like to live in want. Some of our older folks know what that was like. They lived through the dirty 30s. They lived through the war years. They know what it is to be in want because you can't find it. It's sort of like toilet paper in the early days of COVID. Right? It's like, oh, shelves were empty. Can you remember walking in the stores when the shelves were empty? Yeah, for flour and yeast and all kinds of stuff. So it was sort of want, but I still had some toilet paper at home, so I was going to be okay. Like we have this world that we live in. So living a contented life is Paul's challenge to us. And he goes, I have known the secret of being content. So what's that secret? And he tells us, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You know, that verse gets thrown around in all kinds of different places, way out of context. Paul is telling us he knows how to be content whether the house is full or empty, whether his stuff is overflowing or he's barely got a shirt to wear or sandals for his feet. Because, he goes, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's not about winning a Super Bowl. It's not about winning a Grey Cup. It's about finding contentment in my life, trusting God that he will be faithful. I took this picture in Jinka Village. It's at the water pump. Lord, help me to be grateful for the things I consider essential, yet millions have to do without. Part of the context to solve our covetousness and this battle within us for more is to look around and see all those who are living with smiles on their faces, having to fill water jugs like that. Nobody can go back and start a new beginning, but anyone can start today and make a new ending. So here's 4 things that I want you to prioritize and consider as what's really important. Prioritize relationships in this coming year. It helps break covetousness. It helps break the self-focus. Prioritize relationships in your life. Ensure that you've set aside time for them. Prioritize wellness, whatever wellness looks like for you. It's your life, it's your body, it's your hope, it's your future. Prioritize wellness. Prioritize generosity. Prioritizing generosity is probably the biggest solution to covetousness. Give stuff away. Give your stuff away. See what happens. Engage in a world of generosity and see what you can do with the things that you have and the differences that you can make. And then this whole aspect of prioritizing contentment. Figuring out what it is that you need to have a life that senses and is lived with a sense of contentment. Contentment has nothing to do with hardship. It has everything to do with my heart in the midst of that hardship. Prioritize contentment and make that the goal for 2022. There's lots of things I can be disappointed in. Lots of things that I can have to struggle with. But even in that, can I find myself like Paul? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, in plenty and in want. And to quote from the weddings, in sickness and in health, for better or for worse, in sickness, right? I want to live a life that's not bound by covetousness. So here's what that looks like. Under the relational life principles, number 1, parents, honor your parents, honor your family. People, honor another's life. Marriage, honor your commitments. Community, honor another's property. Conversations, honor your word. And contentment, honor your life place. Can you just honor where you live today? And honor the circumstance that you're in and seek to live those out. And my favorite is the Cowboy 10 Commandments. Just one God, put nothing before God, watch your mouth, get yourself to Sunday meeting, honor your ma and pa, no killing, no fooling around with another fella's gal, no taking what ain't yours, no telling tales or gossiping, and don't be hankering, here's that word, don't be hankering for your buddy's stuff. I chose to put all of our prayer focus at the end because I want us to have some personal time as well before we leave the building. I've got a song as well that we can listen to and the sense, but I wanted to end with prayer time for all of us. The Bhutanese were in yesterday and they had a 12-hour, I can't remember how long they were at it, but for an hour at a time, somebody was in our building praying for their church, praying for us, praying for their families, praying for 2022 and what God might be doing. So they did that all day Saturday. Prakash actually has been tested positive again for a second time with COVID, so he's now isolating at home. They're not having services today. They did not have a service last night or yesterday, and they're not having a service next week. Again, trying to manage that. So a lot of their people are online or actually on their phone is how they do ministry. But as we continue to pray for things, I want us to enter into 2022 with this sense of contentment and casting all our anxiety on Him, on God, because He cares for you. So these are just some of the names that we've been praying for. Andy McCallum, he's home, up and about and all doing well. Stacy Vaman, she did have her knee surgery, and so now she's recovering at home. And they're now going to be looking at her other knee to see if it needs some restorative work as well. Doreen and the family, Bob is recovering at home. And Doreen has been diagnosed with a cancer that was confirmed this past week. And so they'll be going into some medication treatments and processing. They're waiting to meet with the specialist. Isabel was also confirmed with cancer this past couple of weeks and had her first visit for her care. Terry and Carly Williams, he's still in the hospital, and I haven't heard from them. Addison Johnson, our 16-year-old that we've been praying for with cancer in his blood, leukemia, he did get to go home as far as I know. And so their family is doing what they can to manage his treatment. And Scott and Carmen, she's the one in 4th stage cancer as well. And just asking God to work in their lives. On a positive note as well, we're going to continue to pray for Kobe Village. January 7th is Ethiopian New Year's, Orthodox New Year's. Actually, there's lots of other countries that are going to be celebrating. But Jesse let me know today that we sent them a check for $2,500 from Central that's going to help them have Christmas because they're in the want side of life, not in the plenty side of life. So that we're able to do something on their behalf is fantastic. So let's bow together in prayer, take a couple of moments for personal reflection, and then I'll close.